Do you think that if a person lives a very moral lifestyle, that they might come back as an animal that is like fun to be, like a bird or something, and maybe...
Fun to be.
Hello, welcome to the Atheist Vanguard. I'm Shane Isgrig.
My name's Johnny.
I'm Rachel.
All right, let's go ahead and get this episode started with that clip. All right, my name's Shane Isgrig. You said your name was?
Vivian.
Vivian, all right, good to talk to you again. So we wanted to kind of dive into another conversation. We talked before about souls, but I wanted to get into the topic of the afterlife. Do you have any specific ideas of an afterlife, like what it's like when people get there? Is there more than one?
I think the closest thing that I would believe would be kind of like Buddhism. Just reincarnation.
Okay.
More specifically reincarnation. Just kind of the energy that you are giving while you're in this life will kind of reflect.
It'll have bearing on your afterlife?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you think that if a person lives a very moral lifestyle, that they might come back as an animal that is like fun to be, like a bird or something, and maybe the people who aren't very moral, like they come back as cockroaches and dung beetles?
I mean, kind of, basically, like simplistically, yeah.
Okay.
And I just think that,
Do you think that, what would you, do you think your mind might change if you found out that maybe a dung beetle didn't mind the fact that it was a dung beetle?
Well, yeah, I think that's another thing, like, I don't think that when you come back, you have any memory of like who,
Right.
and nobody would wake up and be like, oh no, I'm a dung beetle.
Right, because I think it would suck to be a dung beetle and be conscious of, like, as myself, and be like, oh my god, I live in poop, but instead, a dung beetle isn't really thinking that way. Like, they see fecal matter and they're like happy to see it, right? So, okay.
But like, I just feel, I guess, like, that seems kind of like a miserable existence, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
As compared to like a bird.
Okay.
And so, I don't know. Yeah.
For sure, that's interesting. So it sounds like you didn't use the word karma, but some version of karma has bearing on what the afterlife is.
I would think so, yeah.
You think it has to do with reincarnation.
Yeah.
Okay, do you think that whenever life on this planet ends, that we get reincarnated onto another planet, or do you think that reincarnation usually stays within one planet?
No, I mean, I think the universe and everything is ever expanding. There's a million, infinite galaxies. Like, I just think it's silly to assume that it would only exist here. And
so if somebody can die here and get reincarnated in another galaxy, maybe?
Yeah, sure, why not?
I'd prefer that. I don't want to be in the same galaxy for every life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that there's anything that could cause you to maybe adopt a belief in a different afterlife? So maybe somebody comes to you, and a lot of people give the classic heaven and hell, there's a punishment reward, and there are just two places. Do you think there's anything that would convince you that that was the correct one, or do you think that this is the most plausible afterlife to you?
To me, it's the most plausible. I don't see it changing anytime soon, but maybe if I like went deeper into self-discovery or whatever. But right now, that's like the closest thing. Okay.
Could I ask, do you think that anybody alive right now, like maybe you or myself, do you think we might be reincarnated, or do you think that right now you're seeing what's probably the first life that you've lived?
No, I mean, me and my friends talk about this sometimes, just the like, just things like deja vu and like little things, and we kind of joke about it, that we're like, oh, this isn't our first time around, but I can, sure, I mean.
Have you had any experiences of deja vu that have made you think, I've been here before in another life?
Yes.
Is there anything that you could tell me about specifically?
I mean, just kind of, you'll be sitting, I'll be sitting at a restaurant or something, I'll see something, I'll smell something, and it'll trigger a very like familiar thing that I just can't quite place, and I think it's like an interesting phenomenon. But me and my friends kind of joke that it's like.
Do you think it's plausible that maybe you could have smelled the same thing as a kid and it brought back memories that you don't remember?
Totally.
Okay, so do you think there's any way you'd be able to tell the difference in it being deja vu from another life and deja vu from like the beginning of this one, or do you think they would be basically the same experience?
I think the same experience, but kind of like that's the fun in it. Like.
Okay. The fun is not really knowing. The fun kind of comes to like figuring it out.
Is this, my third time as a person or whatever?
Okay. All right, well, that gives me plenty to think about for sure. Thanks again for the interview. It's been a great one. Okay, well, that was a fun conversation.
take on reincarnation that was not necessarily religious, sort of her own. I want to ask you guys, what did you think about that interview?
Go for it.
Start with you.
Sure. I thought that she was really like an energetic person. She was willing to talk. It was, I think, a positive interaction. I think you asked good questions and she engaged with you, so she felt comfortable. Yeah,
she was definitely a really kind and open person. There was no feeling of like, because sometimes there have been times where I was wondering if the person that, who was my interlocutor was annoyed with me, but I didn't get that from her at all. So that was good, yeah.
She seemed like she was having fun with it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And she mentioned that she's talked about this before with her friends. So it seems to me something that she's interested in, which is nice.
Yeah. No, it's fun kind of talking about that whole deja vu and experiences and, stuff like that. It's kind of fun to play around with, but... Yeah, I've never ascribed to a reincarnation.
But is it true is what we're concerned with here, right?
Yeah.
And I like looking at this because you kind of see that she does, and you'll see with a lot of people that they talk about, what they like when they start talking about what they believe. And you'll notice that when that happens, they're obviously implying that like what they want to believe has bearing on what it is they actually believe.
Right.
And I'm glad that I asked her about the example of, do you think that, people who are good come back as animals? It would be fun to be. Do you think that if you're a bad person, you don't live a very moral life, that you might come back as a dung beetle? She says yes, and then she does mention that she doesn't think you come back with any memories, because my criticism of that with Hinduism has always been that, well, these animals aren't like I've said before, I think on this show even, like a dung beetle isn't thinking like, oh my God, I live in poop. They're happy about it, right? Now, she says it seems like a miserable existence, and she likes the idea of flying around more. But I think that that's because from a human being's perspective, flying around and finding something sounds more fun than crawling around in poop. But I don't think that birds are any happier than dung beetles. I don't know if there are any ways to test that, but I don't think that birds are any happier. I'm pretty sure as long as the animal is doing what's compatible with its nature and it's accomplishing what its goals are, which is obviously for survival, then I think they're equally happy.
Yeah, no, when I was watching the interview for the first time, that's what went through my mind. I was like, well, who are we to ascribe, if a dung beetle's happy versus, like an emperor beetle or something. It's like,
to play devil's advocate, you could argue that being prey would be a lot worse than being a predator. So, like, if you wanted to say that bad people came back as gazelles and that good people came back as lions, but you can't get there with logic. You can just say that,
it's just kind of
that's the one animal that I think, like, when you think about prey versus predator, it would really suck to be prey.
Well, there's clearly a hierarchy that she's considering here.
Yes.
With human beings or something intelligent like human beings being at the top, and everything else down the line being lower. Again, like you said, why would being a dung beetle be difficult? I think it'd probably be pretty easy to be a dung beetle. I mean, you're going to get eaten by birds, I'm thinking, but if you like hanging out in that stuff...
One of the people that got reincarnated as a bird will come eat you.
There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff, dung, poop, around, so you're never going to be hungry.
Yeah, there's always going to be fecal matter to jump into.
Your life is short, so you're not going to have to deal with it for very long. And if you're a good dung beetle, which I don't know how that would be difficult to be one, so it's a guaranteed pass up the chain of the hierarchy.
Yeah, raises the question, what would be a bad dung beetle?
A dung beetle that doesn't
I don't think we hold dung beetles morally accountable for anything, do we?
I don't think so.
Well, you know what? Maybe dung beetles hold each other morally accountable.
They might. Who are we to say that they're not holding each other accountable?
Well, we're skeptics who are left without any reason to believe that they do that. But
something that I've always thought about with that is, if the only moral animal in this sort of thought regimen is the human being, right? And every other creature that exists, and actually I want to change the word creature. I always dislike the use of the word creature. Because it implies a creator, doesn't it? But any other being that exists, a dung beetle, a dolphin, an alligator, they don't have, or maybe they don't have moral choice in that way of thinking, then It's essentially you're put in the penalty box. Nothing you do in the penalty box affects anything. You just do your time, and then you come back and you have a chance to do it right this time, but you don't have any memory of what you did. So it's like a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Right?
It doesn't make sense to punish somebody but not let them remember what they did to deserve the punishment. It would be better to let them remember what they were doing. You know, that's why with the whole heaven and hell thing, you know, people in hell are supposed to think about why they're there. You know, you read the Apocalypse of Peter, it talks about, you know, women who have had abortions being taunted by the fetuses, and it talks about liars being held by the tongue. You know what I mean? So
let's blend the Christian metaphysics with a reincarnation metaphysics, and you actually have a chance at this, right? So here, you live a human life. Rachel, you're terrible.
That's true.
That's actually not hypothetical. I'm friends with Rachel. I can vouch for that.
You're terrible. You go to hell for an equivalent amount of time that you've lived, right?
Okay.
And
I can do that.
And all
so
of your
far.
sins are personified and come at you, right?
Okay.
And then it's the end. All right, you're going to be reincarnated, and you're going to remember what you did the last time and what you experienced in hell or purgatory or what have you. And now you get to do it again.
Same thing. Do the same exact.
Is that right? Is that what you're going to do?
No, of course not. You would hopefully learn from your mistakes.
Right.
But what if my goal is to make it to hell? What if I'm like super attracted to Satan or whoever, and
Like a Saddam Hussein from the South Park?
I haven't seen that South Park.
Satan and Saddam have a thing.
Oh,
It's cute.
my.
They're a cute couple.
They're a cute
should watch
couple.
They're dysfunctional, though. They are
Yeah.
dysfunctional.
Satan
I
and
bet.
Saddam Hussein.
I can
are a cute
imagine
couple.
Satan would have some dysfunctional relationships. No, but that's kind of the thing.
So Satan's
about,
the one I like. Every couple has one that I like and one that I don't like, and Satan's the one that I like. In
Really?
every couple.
There's
Not every
couples-
couple.
Okay, I was gonna
not
say,
every
yeah.
couple, but most couples.
Yeah.
But anyway, continue.
No, it's just this karma reincarnation thing. Because if we're looking at it from the perspective of humans and what we would ascribe as a good trait or a bad trait, or this would be punishment to be a dung beetle, this would be awesome to be a bird, but it's like it's not. Would it be awesome to be a bird and then fly into like a plane propeller? Like, a dung beetle's perspective, they're going to be like, "Hey, Shane, you better come over here and eat some more poop, otherwise you're not going to have good
And
karma.
I could sooner-
and you'll come back as a bird or
I can
something."
sooner reason out that it would be better to be a dung beetle for the kind of the reason he was talking about. If you're a dung beetle, your food is everywhere. If you're a bird, you have to look for it. You have to work harder.
Yeah.
You're more likely to starve. There's more competition. I mean, when you really break it down, being a dung beetle is easier. So if one of them's happier, which I don't think either is, but if one's happier, I would sooner guess it would be the dung beetle. But that being said, it goes into us wanting to think that, right? Because what reason do you have to think that? And I brought up that she didn't use the term karma, but she agreed with me when I asked, like, something to the effect of karma has bearing on what your afterlife, right? And I think that it's good that I asked that. She said yes, but where do we go from somebody stating that they want something to be the case to it is? Because, you know, I'm not trying to argue when I interview people, right? So how would you go about, because you haven't gone out with us and done the interviews, but
Not yet, no.
How would you go about somebody saying that they think karma has bearing on how they come back, and you don't want to argue with them? What do you do?
I'd ask them why.
Okay, that's exactly where, yeah because
why?
I really failed to ask why more than once. So
why is an important question.
Yeah.
She might not have an answer to it. She might say, I don't know, it just kind of feels right. Well, why does it feel right?
Right. The same thing when I asked her if there was anything that might convince her of a different afterlife, and she said no. She thinks this is the afterlife that's the most plausible. You know, you'll start noticing the more you talk to somebody that what they want to be true makes them start believing certain things are true. And when that happens, sometimes I try to ask people about, what about, you know, poverty, cancer? Surely you don't like these things, but you believe that they exist, right? And that's the problem with, you know, getting into things that we can't really test.
Yeah. Why do you believe that? Do you believe it because it feels good? Well, it feels good to me to know that I'm going to go home and I'm going to see $1 million check.
Hey, I would love that.
With my name spelled right, and then I'm going to cash that check, and it's not going to bounce, and then I'm going to pay my bills, and then when I do, my creditors are going to say, "Oh no, never mind, we forgave that to you. Also, here's more money, and here's a diamond encrusted gold tank for you to drive around town that runs on solar power." I mean, I want all these things to happen, but
that also ties into because like what she wants to believe. She says, she brings up the universe being ever expanding. When I asked her, do you think that the reincarnation is limited to this planet, or do you think we go to other ones? She says she thinks you could go to other ones, again, because she likes the idea. But I kind of wanted to ask both of you, what do you think sounds better, going to a different planet or being reincarnated as a different animal on this one? Would you rather be the same species on a different planet or a different species?
You're talking about being like human on a different planet.
Yeah, or 3 scenarios where you could pick between being a human being on a different planet, different specimen on a different planet, or a different specimen on this planet. What are you going to go with?
And your choice is binding, and Shane's going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Shane's going to make it happen. Yeah. Okay.
You think
Shane.
You're on an atheist show right now.
Right?
I'm God.
And if you don't choose, the worst thing is going to happen to you. So don't punt on that.
So you got to choose right now.
If I have to choose right now, I choose not to choose.
Okay, worst thing. How about you?
What is the worst thing? What if that would have been my best thing? Because what I was actually going to choose would be like a new entity on a new planet in a new galaxy.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be interesting, but I wouldn't have any memory of it, so.
Okay.
Yeah, do I remember?
I'm going to say yes.
Oh, then I'd like to check out another galaxy, just for variety.
Okay, so you do it as a human being or as a different specimen?
Oh, there are humans in other galaxies in this?
Scenario.
In this scenario.
Yeah, I'll do that because...
You'll stay a human. You don't want to be something new.
Do I only have one choice? Yeah, I only have one choice.
Yeah, you don't know what you're going to be. You're going to be... I'm going to say you're going to be some new specimen you've never heard of, or you're going to be a human.
Let's do one change at a time. I know what it's like to be a human, but I know what it's like to be a human on Earth. Let's send me to this other galaxy where things are going to be different so I can experience different things. And too many changes I won't be able to compare because maybe being a bird on this Earth would be the equivalent of being a bird on the other planet. But I know what it's like to be a human so I can compare and contrast.
All right, see, so this exercise that I'm kind of applying right now, like what you're doing when you're coming up with this is what people tend to do when they come up with their beliefs. It's just that they believe what they're saying as they're coming up with it. And that's what I wanted to illustrate, is that what so that's all we can get to with that exact topic. But I wanted to ask you guys, what else about this interview did you find interesting? Like, do you think that her confidence and the belief might have went down a little bit, or do you think that she might have been considering... What do you think she might have been thinking toward the end?
What she might have been thinking, interesting, because my thought was, this is something that's semi-common where people don't have a really hardcore or like set belief system, and then they just kind of, toss in some of the other stuff. But she probably walked away. I don't know. I didn't think about that perspective.
How about you? What do you think she might have been thinking when she was walking away from that conversation?
I don't think she's dug very deep into this.
Yeah.
You think that this might inspire her to think more about it?
Maybe.
I like that.
Yeah.
We don't know.
It's non-committal, right? She didn't seem to really feel the need to question it. And my thought when I was watching it was, this seems like a really important thing for her to have an understanding of, instead of just sort of go with the flow, right?
Right.
This is her eternal soul or long-lived soul.
Right.
And this life now is a temporary one.
Yeah.
You would think that she'd want to get down to brass tacks and figure out what it is so she can have a better afterlife. But and this is not a criticism of her as a bad person, but I tend to find in my interactions with people that if you're a Christian, why aren't you doing Bible study every single day?
I get what you mean. There are a lot of people. There are some, right? But I'm always a little bit confused when somebody doesn't put a lot of thought into like what happens when I die, like where do I go? Because I started there. Like, this started as a spiritual journey. I was afraid of What if I have the wrong denomination and I go to hell? Need to figure out which one's right. How do I know this is even the right religion? How do I know there's even a God? Oh, wait, I don't. And then, here I am today.
Right.
So,
I mean, I would be digging into this. I think a lot of people in the skeptical community are asking these kind of questions, and believers are too of the various religions. But again, you're Christian, you should be studying the Bible probably.
Yeah.
You're a Muslim, study the Quran.
Well, that's the thing though. Muslims tend to study the Quran. Like a lot of my Muslim friends growing up, like by the time they were 13, 14, they had read the Quran.
Yeah.
I can't think of any Christian my age that has read the Bible. Any Christian that I've ever met that's read the Bible has been a pastor, and like two other people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Most people have not read it. Oh yeah, one of them was a Satanist that I interviewed on this show.
Yeah.
He said he read the whole Bible. I
Read the
believe
whole
him.
Bible,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And if you haven't read it, how can you be sure that your beliefs are true, right?
When you don't even know what they are.
When you don't necessarily know what they are except from some other source. And how can you convince other people that what you believe is true, except if it's just based on feelings?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, though.
good
I don't
vibes?
think she really cares too much about what other people believe, to be honest with you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think
No,
that
I got
she
that,
really
yeah.
wants to convince other people that this is true. It makes her happy. She goes with it.
Right.
I'm all about not believing something just because it makes you happy. You should believe things, based on whether or not they're true. I don't think what she's doing I don't think there's anything really harmful about it because she isn't going around inspiring other people to believe in this. But, I would definitely like for her to consider her idea more, think more about how she arrived at it. I do hope this conversation inspired that. Like he said, we can't really know whether or not it did. So that covers most of what I wanted to discuss, if not everything. But I want to ask both of you, is there anything else you wanted to bring up before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about deja vu.
Okay.
It was a little bit of an interesting topic.
Yeah.
I haven't really looked too far into it. I was much more interested in it as kind of a Christian than I was an atheist, because then you don't, without that religious lens on, you look at things a little bit differently. But what the example, as far as I understand it, that she gave, that like smelled memory where she couldn't quite place it, isn't exactly deja vu. Deja vu to me, at least, was that kind of like, oh, this is exact. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like it was clear as day. This, it's usually like a quick little, for lack of a better term, vision where, it's supposed to be that, oh, I've experienced this exact same thing. Or
For me, it's something in between that. You're
Yeah.
like, for me, like there are certain scents that it's like if my mom used to spray that Febreze when I was 13.
Right.
There's like a specific pumpkin spice Febreze that I see you laughing.
Right.
Yeah. No, but there's a specific pumpkin spice Febreze that my mom would spray around fall when I was 13.
Oh, yeah.
And now, anytime I've ever smelled that Febreze since then, I'm brought back to being 13.
Right.
Like I remember that house that I lived in, right? But
Yeah,
sometimes
no,
you could have a familiar scent. You cannot remember what it is. Like I've seen people share things on Facebook, and it's a picture of, it's probably like a drawing from a book, and everyone's like, what book is this from? Why do I remember this? And everyone shares it, and everyone's like, I also remember this and don't remember what it's from.
Right.
And then some hero comes along and is like, it's this book.
Right.
And then we all commend that
that we
person.
all come in that. Well, the point that I was getting to is that there are certain examples of stuff like that, and there's actually a bunch of different, kind of not versions of deja vu, but there's like that familiar memory, but you can't quite place it.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. There's that kind of. I forget. They all have unique
Déjà
French
vu,
names.
isn't that one of them?
There's one, and there's
Something
like
like that.
déjà vécu or something. I can't. My French is -1. Not even 0. But yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon. But I don't think there's anything that we can ascribe to it. Like
Right.
it's kind of fun to play around
Yeah.
with. Was like, oh, was I in another life standing at this exact moment, kind of thing, or is this bringing up a memory? But if we come back with no memories, how are we getting those little?
Right, and that's
little
also why I
jobs.
kind of asked her about, how she could tell the difference between if she was experiencing deja vu and it was something that she had experienced in this exact life, or if it was something in a previous life, and what the criteria would be to tell the difference. And she admittedly couldn't tell how she would differentiate, okay, this is something from this life versus this is something from the past life. You know what I mean? So
I had a few thoughts.
Okay, go for it.
How is it decided? Is there a person that decides it? Is there a council that decides how you're going to go to a cockroach now? Is there like a point system it's baked into the existence of the universe and the metaphysical substrates or whatever you want to say? Is there do you decide because you're perfectly enlightened once you leave this rotting corpse that we call our life?
I like that idea, reincarnation, and you get to choose.
I think I need to get that dung beetle experience again to bring down my soul's arrogance or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. I should have asked. That's a good question.
Yeah, I didn't think about that either. That is an interesting point of view.
And then the notion that, and this is something that I had read a criticism of Hinduism in the past. And I'm sure that Hindu apologists have really sophisticated responses to this kind
I would
of stuff.
love to hear from a Hindu apologist. If there are any Hindu apologists listening, please reach out in the comments. Sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all.
Please go on.
The notion of there's a karmic balance. You have a dharma, which is your duty, right?
Right.
Apologize if I don't get it right, but you deserve to be where you are. The dung beetle deserves to be in the poop, right? The eagle deserves to be soaring over the clouds. And the poor person living on the street raped and murdered a child at some point in a previous life, right?
So there's no injustice.
That might be an answer to why there is injustice, but to me, that's sick. Because a child born into a terrible abusive environment by this rubric
Belief.
deserves to be there.
Exactly. It's exactly the problem with it.
There's the harm.
There's the harm right there. Somebody comes back and they have a disability and you assume that they deserve it, so you don't take care of them, you disregard them. That's the kind of thing that it leads to.
And then how does nirvana play into it in regards? Because what I was reading up on it, because I'm not that familiar with, Buddhism and meditation and all that, like this whole inner enlightenment kind of thing. But people, or at least articles, were talking about nirvana. You reach this like enlightenment nirvana thing, and you're taken out of this like reincarnation.
It's such
thing.
bullshit.
I meditate. Rebirth.
Well, it was,
and that doesn't happen.
It was not
doing it right.
One of the articles
I know.
reading,
I'm not a true Scotsman.
it could be the case, but no. One of the articles I was reading was talking about achieving nirvana was to break you out of this cycle of constant reincarnation into this karmic injustice system, and I don't know how that would work. Would you go to like a nirvana heaven? Is that where Kurt Cobain is? I don't know.
Well, and I don't think that the person you spoke to, I don't think that she's necessarily thought that far.
Right.
Not because she's
that deep. Yeah.
Not that she's unintelligent or that she's lazy, but
it's just that this isn't something she's been interested enough to put enough thought into.
Yeah, it's like that's good enough. Sure.
Well, I've read more Bible as an atheist than I was ever as a Christian.
For sure. Same.
Why aren't you reading Hindu texts?
Pretty much because I don't care about ancient texts. I was going to read the Bible like cover to cover and do this whole like study on it, and then I was, I watched one of the atheist videos, and
a lot of it's boring.
You don't.
Well, I
would
listen
rather
to audio
point out that
books.
the Bible is irrelevant towards religious beliefs.
There are some books in the Bible that I would recommend reading, but like if you're gonna read Exodus, well, if you're arguing with somebody, Exodus 21 is the good one to go to because that's where all of the rules for owning slaves are. The book of Exodus gets boring after chapter 20, but the first 20 chapters of it, it's an interesting book.
Yeah.
Genesis, one hell of a story. Really one hell of a story. Weird story.
Yeah.
Probably.
I read Genesis.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't read it if it didn't have its historical and cultural influence that it has. But With Exodus, I actually liked reading it, to be honest. I actually liked the story. I mean, I don't like God as a character, but I'm just like, oh, wow. This is interesting, you know.
Not to make the enemy of the good, but there are more interesting stories out there. Ones with more consistent characters, better creation myths.
Well, yeah, and then it's also part of it is like half of it's just boring, and especially when you're an atheist, you're like, I am reading rules that I don't follow, that someone made up thousands of years ago. Oh my God, this is boring, and that's why you start skipping that stuff. You're like, I don't care about this.
But you read it not just maybe to if you had a Christian background, you might want to reread it to sort of shed a new light upon your past, but also because we live in a world with people that do believe, and you want to be able to have a common vocabulary so that you can talk with them about things. Again, if the person you spoke to had dug deeper into her own beliefs on reincarnation and had a doctrine or at least some guidance on it, you could have asked her more specific questions.
Right.
She seemed kind of just happy-go-lucky, give or take it. That seems right, sure. But there's not a lot of stake in it. Like maybe 5 years from now, she's no longer believes in reincarnation.
Maybe.
Well, we get that with like the Shane is a cryptid episode where, you know, that it's kind of like this old, it's kind of fun to think about. Yeah, I kind of believe it. But if you really were to like hold their feet to the fire, they'd be like, not really, you know.
Like,
kind of thing.
It is possible that somebody
very,
else
like,
did it. Yeah.
Like, there's definitely, Goat Man and all the stuff. And then you kind of get to the end of the interview and he's like, it's kind of just fun to believe,
Well, can I ask this? Like, if she's not studying or digging deeper into her metaphysics, much like we have friends who are religious that don't dig into their religious beliefs.
Right.
But we can see how this is really important because it's much bigger than the life that we're living right now. What's more important? What do they do? What are they spending their time doing? Probably taking care of living, taking care of their families, taking care of their health, paying bills.
Schoolwork. And
just living.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and she also could be on a transition out, because if somebody were to interview me on the street as I was kind of transitioning out of Christianity, I would not have been like, I'm questioning these beliefs kind of thing. I would have done more of a wishy-washy interview kind of thing. So who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. All I could do is hopefully plant some seeds of doubt. Hopefully inspire some doubt. I definitely don't think I'm making everybody that I interview lose their belief, but I do think there have been a lot of people who have lost a lot of confidence in the belief.
Right.
And with this girl, I'm uncertain of it, but I will say that she gave a great interview and I appreciated it. So yeah, anything else you guys wanted to add? All right. Well, that does wrap up our show. I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank, not that I don't want to thank you, I just wanted to
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
I totally just second-handed complimented to Rachel. But
Rachel, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
On behalf of Shane and Johnny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
and definitely
Johnny.
thank you to everybody who is watching. Thanks. Again, if you have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, we would really appreciate it if you'd go and do that. What else helps us is if you hit that like button. There's also a link to our Patreon page if you want to support the show. That's all there. Thank you so much for watching. Please join us next week. See you next time.
Doubt is always good.